Morning all, and welcome to another Jump Advisory webinar. This week we're going to look at a very interesting topic, I think, this week, which we hope will create not only productivity and bottom line profit, but also help to change staff morale and look at retention. We're going to look at the good pound versus the bad pound. We've been debating this for quite some time here at Jump, and it's often described as, certainly I've described it in my clients' meetings as vanity, sanity, followed by profanity. And what I mean that is the vanities of having certain types of clients on your books, which look really good for your business. And then the sanity comes when you start to understand that those type of clients see you as a suspect and not as a prospect, and they treat you literally in that way as a suspect. And so you need to examine the cost of the account and the opportunity lost to see whether or not that account is worth keeping. And once you get to that point, that is where the profanity starts. As the clouds start to part, you see the anger abate from the person, the swearing stops, and they can start to see a clear path of how they can start to deal with those clients. If you start to think that recruitment average is we fill 2 out of every 10 roles that we take on. Now, don't ask me where that stat comes from. It's been a stat that I've been given since I was a small child in recruitment, but it certainly bears fruit with some of the clients that we go into initially and start working with, that they are filling on average 2 out of 10 clients. That means on average, 8% of your time that your consultants work, where you're pushing them to achieve things, simply isn't going to happen. So it's like pushing the proverbial P up Everest with your nose. So having done lots of reviews with clients, it's an amazing sight when you suddenly see the wood for the trees and the actual opportunity open up, and you suddenly see that they understand that there is a different way to build a client base that's more productive, can change the outcomes that you get, and creates a better opportunity for those in a business. So if you look at today's marketplace, clients are looking for that blue unicorn, but they want to pay peanuts, and they treat us like monkeys. We're simply there to perform for them. So how do we change that? So today we're going to look at the bad pound versus the good pound investment. I'm joined by Heather and Dave Pye today. The 2 Pauls are out on client site. So let's kick this off. It's going to be quite interesting because we don't have to fight now, Mr. Jacobs, for space on the talking space, or I'd have to close him down quietly, and we won't have his guitar either. So let's open up. What I'd like from you two, first of all, is can you explain your version or your understanding of the good pound versus the bad pound syndrome? Because I'm sure they'll be slightly different to what my views are. Heather.
Well, the silence there from Mr. Pye, so I'll leap in. I hate the
No, sorry,
question.
I was waiting for Paul Jacobs because I just don't believe he's not going to appear somewhere.
He will pop up, no doubt, somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. In which case, Dave, you go first.
I was waiting.
Well, someone should kick off. Dave, do you want to kick off?
For me, it's relatively simple. The stat that you said had about the 2 out of 10. I don't want us to go away thinking that 80% of what we do is therefore wasted, only because often in that 80%, we are unearthing candidates that we can then use for some of the other work. And I think sometimes it can be dangerous for certainly some of the new consultants to think, hold on, this is worthless work, when actually there is a value to some of the work that we do. But the principle from a client perspective of that we do end up working on a lot of stuff that we don't close for that is absolutely true. And for me, the good pound is a client that's in the sweet spot of what our business does, or what our office does, or what our niche desk does. If you're a company with just 5 or 6 consultants, or you're a company with 2 or 3 offices, it's looking and mapping out, actually, what do we sell and who do we sell it to, or who do we want to sell it to? And they're the sort of companies that we should aim to build a professional sales relationship with. That's our view. If they don't want that professional sales relationship with us, and they do treat us poorly, or they're not prepared to engage on reasonable terms, and I love that phrase about the blue unicorn. If that's what they want from us, then clearly they're not the type of business that we should be doing or trying to do business with, and we should be pointing our people away from those type of potential prospects, because they're not going to become clients. And I think in a market where we know it's buoyant now, and as far as we can see, it's going to be buoyant for the next 6 to 12 months, which is probably as far as we can look, then we should only really be doing the work that we know that our clients can articulate that they value what we do.
Yeah, I support that wholeheartedly. Dave, I think that we're in a market at the moment where all the data says that businesses are going to recruiters more often. They're finding their own talent acquisition more challenging.
Yeah.
They're more prepared to engage with recruitment businesses. And so actually, as an industry, we can take this opportunity to be pickier about who we choose to deal with, and to, we have maybe the power balance is slightly different in that we have the ability to influence clients because they need us more. And that we should take the opportunity to capitalize on that. We ought to be only taking on vacancies and clients that we know we've got a cat in hell's chance of filling. And as you said, particularly for new consultants, so there is this real tendency when you're starting out in your career, and more of us are bringing in new people to this industry and developing our own consultants, that if your client or somebody you're talking to you asks you to help them with a vacancy that's not in your niche, that's not in your specialism, that you haven't got available candidates for, there is that tendency to, oh, it's a vacancy, let I'll take it, I'll have a go, I'll try and fill it, that isn't going to work in the current market. And so being even more controlled about what we say yes to, so that we know it is our niche, it is our specialism, it is continuing to promote us as a consultant. I think this is the perfect market to exercise that.
I think that's led to a number of questions that I want to throw in. The first one is, what did the cat do in the first place to get in hell? That's my first question, to understand that, because the cat in hell's chance. But I think what you said there, the comment there that you said there, Heather, that I really picked up on, was power balance. And the balance of power is shifting towards more the recruitment agency due to certain things. Now, obviously, we've all worked with clients that just become that CV black hole. We've all worked with clients that do not give feedback. We've all worked with clients that want everything for nothing. And this is where the power of balance is starting to shift, because obviously what happens is that we don't put our heart and soul into that client. Although that client might be a large blue chip, it might have a really prestigious name, but we feel that we have to work with that client because of that name. And what you've said there, Heather, was a really interesting point, is what we say yes to. But if we're going to say yes to something, and I've been sort of preaching this with my clients at the moment, is what are you going to say no to? Because if we keep saying yes, then we start to compound our problem of working with clients that don't respect us, don't trust us, and therefore are giving everything to everybody and then demanding the world from us. But then when we want the feedback so we can help cure their recruitment processes, etc., they're not forthcoming. Where we should be working with those clients that are, I'm trying to find the right phrase. I was going to say that we want to work with those clients that we feel there is a prospect to prospect relationship, where they understand what we do, they value what we do, they will pay for what we do. And it's interesting when I start to look at, I was with a client the other day, and we start to look at their day sales outstanding, the debt that was outstanding. And it was really interesting. It was all their bad clients that were all outstanding at their debt. And it was all their good clients that they really appreciated and had a really good working relationship, who was not just paying them on time, was paying them massively before the due date. So it starts to sort of really expand massively, your view of why are you working with certain clients that don't respect and don't trust you, don't pay you, because the flip side of this is, what does this do for morale within the staff? And I think this is the bigger question that we start to ask. If I'm stuck on that client that doesn't give me feedback, I might only fill 1 out of 50 jobs they give me, etc., but I'm made to work that client like a dog, then it starts to really affect me as a person, and that helps attrition. It reduces, it helps, sorry, it creates attrition, but
Yeah.
it also creates really a bad vibe within the office place because you don't want to work those type of roles.
Yeah.
So I think.
And can I give you an example, Howard, just before you move on to
Yeah.
that point? Because Paul Sharp and I are working with a client, and we had exactly that conversation only a couple of weeks ago, where they had a very senior role, potentially, you know, a big fee to come. But the client was refusing to give them a proper brief, was refusing to, you know, just wouldn't give them access to their hiring managers to discuss, wouldn't discuss their process. And in the end, in debate, we were able to give this client the confidence to actually go back to their client and say, you know, with respect, I know that's not going to work. I know that this is the best way for you to fill that role. And I'd rather not have it on that basis. So I don't want to work with you. So, you know, in a very polite, respectful way. Anyway, but come round then the next call that Paul and I are having with this particular client, big smile on their face, because that client's come back and said, you're right, actually, and I'm not getting what I need. And actually, I want to work with you exclusively. You tell me what I need to do to work this job. And it was fantastic to see that power of saying no and saying, I'm not going to work that way because I know it's not going to work, because I'm an expert and I do know how this is going to work, paid off. And that will be a good client for life now.
Well, we've thrown this conversation open, haven't we, quite a lot into clients, and we've always said this, and I've been saying this to my clients that I'm out with constantly with, that, you know, there's something wrong in 2 meetings that occur every year. The client has a meeting every year when they plan their growth, they plan their business, and they plan their headcount growth every year. And in part of that meeting, they'll talk about their recruitment strategy. And there's one person missing from that meeting, a recruiter that actually knows what's happening in the market. And yet we do the same. We plan how we're going to provide our clients with the best service in the world, but what's missing from that meeting is clients to tell us whether that service is right or not. And that's down to that prospect to suspect relationship, where if we had a prospect to prospect relationship, we may have that more information. Because we talked about this the other week, didn't we, about clients coming to us and saying, here's a job. Today is the 1st of September, and I'd like someone to start on the 10th of September. And all of a sudden the rush is there to actually get that candidate, get the CVs, get them across, etc. Their recruitment process doesn't work because we know they're going to delay for whatever reason on CVs, etc., etc., etc. But actually, if we ask the question, when did you plan this recruitment? I bet they said, oh, we planned it in January when we planned our headcount. And yet we know 5 days before. And that's the problem. And that's a genuine prospect to suspect relationship rather than a prospect to prospect relationship. So if the average in the UK is we place 2 out of every 10 requirements we take on, why do recruitment agencies persist with bad clients?
And I think some of that, Howard, is very simple. As recruitment agents, we don't value ourselves as high as we should. It's about our ability to look at ourselves and say, you know what, talent fuels progress for these companies that we work with, and we provide the talent. We talk about the golden clients, the ones with the great brands and the great image. Well, actually, what recruiters do in their niches, you could be sitting there listening to this webinar now, working as a niche supplier, and you know the market upside down, inside out. You know that not only are there no blue unicorns, there are no unicorns, there are not even any horses, but what there is are 2 ponies somewhere with a certain skill, and you know that because you know the market, because you've got consultants that map the market and know the market. Therefore, your value is equal to, if not better, than your much more famous big client that is looking to engage with you. And if you enter into a conversation with confidence, with elan, with an elegance that says, actually, you need me because this is why, then you'll find that those percentages will change. And I do believe this very strongly, that it comes from the top. You can't just allow your consultants to make those decisions at the desk. You've got to say, as leaders of your business, whether you're running a company of 5 or 50 or 500, actually, we matter, what we do matters, our access into the talent in the UK or wherever we work matters. We need to display that in our attitude, in our confidence with our clients. And if nobody gives you that respect, and you use the word respect, Heather, nobody gives you that respect, then we're not going to deal with them. Kind of strong words, but that's what we've got to do.
Yeah, and it is, as Stacey said Helen has said in the comments, it's about having confidence, isn't it? It's having the confidence to value what you do. And that confidence gives you the ability to say, no, I'm not working like that. Yep. These are my terms. Yeah. And as you say, if you can't do it now, if you can't do it in the market we're currently in, you're never going to be able to do it. And and now this market is where you get most value from it.
Yeah.
I think if you talk to some of these clients, and what Helen's saying is very interesting, that if you read Blue Ocean Strategy, which is, I know it's one of your favorite books, Dave, and you start to think we're in a red ocean where everyone's competing, everyone's there. And I've described it to this client as, I love going to Filey. I was at Filey at the weekend and what have you. And I like getting fish and chips at Filey, and tend to what happens in the fish and chips, as soon as you sit down, there is a swarm of seagulls around you, waiting for the fish and chips. And you throw a chip away just to get rid of them, and they all dive in on the chip. Well, the seagulls are the recruitment agencies, and the chip is the job. And that's what happens. There is one smart sneagle, though, that always seems to stand to a side and then walk up to you whilst all the others have gone the other way. And she's created her own strategy. And that's what we need to create, our own strategy, where we are one-on-one with the client. We're in a blue ocean and no one else is there with us in that ocean. And I think we persist with bad clients because it is that vanity stage. And I remember having numerous arguments with numerous consultants and managers and business owners about, I'm working with this big blue chip. And I'm going, right, okay, but we're not making any placements, but we're investing a huge amount of time. And then what I've ended up doing is, right, okay, let's pull the number of requirements and the number of CVs, the number of interviews and the number of placements. And you suddenly find you've got an inordinate number of jobs that you've worked. You've sent 3 CVs to all of those jobs. You've had a handful of interviews and you've had less than 3 or 4 placements. And I've said, right, now let's work out how long it takes to do that process. And they suddenly realize the amount of time that they're investing in a client that isn't actually bringing them money back. So although they might have made 20 grand, what they've actually spent is probably 50 grand to get that 20 grand, with the amount of time and investment that it's taken them to do all the things that they have to do for that client. And I think that's when you start to really understand that having that nice shiny badge isn't actually worth what that shiny badge is made of. So we've got to start to think sometimes we need to get rid of that mindset of I'm working with this client. And it could be a recruitment consultant spent years and years trying to break into that client, and they've finally broken down the door and they've got in, and they suddenly found out that actually all isn't rosy in the garden, but they're not prepared to accept that. And they want to try and change that, and they work really hard to try and change that. And sometimes the change has to be, I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to disappear. And if this value, they will come back to you, as Helen has said, and as your client has said there, they will come back to you because they value that statement all of a sudden. But if you're forever saying yes to everything that they need, they'll forever take advantage of you. So it's understanding what those matrix look like, and it's understanding the amount of time that you invest. And then you look at that time that you invest and you add one simple question to the end of it. How much money have I lost because I've not been able to have the opportunity elsewhere to work on other jobs? Now, all of a sudden, it's doubled your loss. So you start to think about it in that fashion, then you start to look at really why some clients are proper bad clients.
Oh, and honestly, my worst clients I've ever worked with have been the proper enormous blue chips. The really big, that just seem to have this corporate arrogance that everybody wants to work with us and we're so big that we can treat you like I mean, they're just, I would love to name a couple of them that we were so excited to work with, and then you just realise.
Well, I do. There's somebody on this there's someone on the webinar now that I worked with a number of years ago, and one of our major clients, or the major clients for that company, wasn't paying them. They had a payroll out in India, and it got to the point where I was speaking to them almost daily, and they said, you need to send your invoices to India in paper form. And I said, okay, have you got a printer? And they said, yes. I said, can you take the email that I've sent you, open it up, open up the PDF with all the invoices on and print them off? And they said, why? I said, because then you've got paper form and it saves me actually posting them and you've got them there. Oh, it was just a whole world of horrors was going on. And they were owing, not thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it was all little things that they were blocking it on, etc. We haven't sent this invoice in paper format. It was just absolutely ridiculous. The hoops they make you jump through to get the money that you've invested back and the time. So here are the questions. That's a couple of symptoms of bad clients. What are the symptoms then of bad clients?
For me, when you've got a requirement only matters at the end when you get paid. Yeah, it's about requirement to cash. We're all running niche boutique type businesses. There may be some on here that are running big companies, but for most part, most of the jump clients that we work with, their sweet spot is between sort of 5 and 50 consultants, 5 and 30 consultants, something like that. So therefore, as we know, cash is king. So you've got to get paid. So for me, the definition, and you mentioned DSO had day sales outstanding. You look at, you've got the client, if they're not paying you, either on terms or within a very, very short term, then they are a definition for me of a bad client. You can have some of the most amazing blue chip type clients. And when you said blue chips in Filey, I was thinking, oh, different color chips in Filey to the rest of us. But when you've got, when you've got a client that just isn't paying you, sadly, I would say for me, one of the definitions is that they're not paying you on time, or as you've just said, Howard, they're looking to make it difficult. What we do, we are blue chip boutique recruitment companies. Everybody on here runs or works for a blue chip recruitment company, whether you think of it or not. You are the Facebook, the Google, the whatever brand you like to think of. In your market, that's what you run. So they should be glad to be doing business with you because you've got access to the talent. So therefore, they should be paying you. They should be paying you on time. Yes, sometimes there are small glitches, but for the most part, if they're not paying you, they're not a good client. As in, they're not paying you on time, they're not a good client. That's one definition for me.
And another definition for me, and I think some clients would not agree with me, but I think that exclusivity is for me, if they're not prepared to give you exclusivity. And I know, oh, well, we need to spread the network from a client's point of view, we want to deal with lots of, honestly, I wouldn't deal with them if they're not prepared to give you exclusivity, at least for a period of time. Because we all know that we're all looking at the same market. They either trust you or they don't. They either know you understand the market and you know where the clients are or not. So for me, exclusivity, not being willing to give you exclusivity, is a big red flag.
I think Jojo Hull summed it up there. To me, a bad client is someone that doesn't work in relationship as a partnership. And I think we've talked about this quite a lot. And that prospect to suspect relationship is what we have at the moment, where we're the suspect and the client is a prospect. We see the client as a prospect, they see it as a suspect. As soon as the client starts to see us as a prospect, that we can give them talent that they haven't got access to, and we can give them in an extremely beneficial way that will help reduce their overall cost of recruitment, then they start to see the prospect of working with us and they start to see the advantage of working with us. Then they start to work in that way. So to me, the symptoms of a bad client is everything that you two have described, but that inability to actually listen to you and listen to the advice that you're giving about what's happening in the marketplace. The fact that they don't come and talk to us about what's happening in the marketplace doesn't say that they're a bad client, but what it says is they don't see us as a prospect. Otherwise, they'd be coming asking that information. When they're doing these planning meetings, how much easier would it be if you knew that these are the projects that are coming up over the next 12 months? These are the perm heads, these are the temp heads, these are the contract heads that I will be planning in this period of time. And rather than looking now on the 1st of September to start on the 10th of September, I might have been looking at, the 15th of July all the way through, because I know that they're hard to find already setting people up, which means that I can get people through the recruitment process quicker, faster, and actually get them starting on the start date that the client wants. And that's the partnership, Joe. That's the relationship that we want to create with them. So to me, if they see us as a suspect and treat us as a suspect, that to me is an indication that they are a bad client. And that's how we change. So the question is, how do we change a bad client into a good client? And this is the question that we want to get to, because we all know what happens if they're a bad client, what we should be doing, but we seldom actually do that. And when you do it, as Helena said, it is very liberating, and it's probably one of the best calls that you will ever make, to sack a client. So how do we start to change a bad client into a good client?
Yeah, I think most of it, Howard, if we're honest with each other, a client is often an individual that works for the client. We talk about Facebook, for example. I use that as an example, but we don't deal with Facebook. We deal with John Smith and Helen Smith and 2 or 3 other people within that client.
There are other Smiths available, by the way.
But for me, the way that you change it is, it's almost like that one person at a time. If you've got the time to do it, if you can see potential in that client that isn't behaving in the way that you think is giving you mutual respect, that isn't valuing you, but you want to continue because you've got the skills and you've taken the time to educate them about what the market is doing, where the skills are, why they should be hiring and why they should be using you. It's to deal with that on a one-to-one basis with the person you're dealing with. And to be honest, if the best relationship you've got isn't going to listen to what you have to say, you're going to struggle to get that message further on within the organization. So I think you start off with just the people, the person, the team, however it is that you know. And if you can't convince them, and you know that you're right because you've got the market, you've got the data, you've got the intelligence, then it is going to be a struggle, and your time is better served elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll say right now, I'm not sure that it's worth investing the time. We're not scrabbling around for jobs right now. We're not scrabbling around for clients right now. I'm not sure that it's worth, because it's as you say, it's an education piece. You've got to build a relationship with the individuals that you know in that client. You need to help them to see, from their point of view, how you're working with you, your specialism, your expertise will help them achieve their goals. There's a big education piece, and showing them and demonstrating your credibility. Right now, have we got time for that? No, really? I don't think we have. I don't think we should be wasting our time on it. I think we should move on and find those clients who get it, who understand what we add, and the expertise that we bring, and who don't think we're like an estate agent, who get that we're genuinely consultants.
And I think that starts, to me, is how do we change a bad client into a good client? I think that starts a little bit close to home, Dave. I think that starts in the actual agency. And I know that I've done this with a number of agencies, and I've done this with somebody last week that's on this call, is we actually went through all of their clients and absolutely listed their clients, and we listed them in those who give us lots of jobs, those who gives us a few jobs, and those that gives us an occasional job. And then we started to then pull it out even further. We then start to use the Boston Matrix. We then start to put these people into different relationship organizations. Where are we? Are we acceptance stage? Are we trust? Are we loyalty? Are we advocacy stage, etc.? Then we put them in the swim lanes as, are they a dog? Are they a question mark? Are they a rising star? Are they a cash cow? And it was interesting, the post that I put out and the email that I put out this morning was, I always get the same 4 responses. Oh my God, I don't know my client base as much as I thought I did. Oh my God, some of my best clients are actually some of my worst clients. How do I change this? And all those sort of things start to happen. But what they all suddenly realize is how much opportunity is sat there in their current client base that they didn't know about. So to me, it starts with actually labeling your clients properly and then putting a plan in place, because you may have a client that, as the Boston Matrix describes it, as a dog, and you may put a plan in place to say, right, what do we do? Do we revive the dog, or do we put the dog down? And that's the bit where we think about sacking the clients. So what Dave's talking about there, is it a personal relationship? Is it a business relation? What is it is? How do we change that relationship so both actually benefit, because then both are seeing us as a prospect? But then it's looking at the other clients and saying, right, what do I do with my rising stars? What do I do with my cash cows? What do I do with those clients that I know nothing about? And it's putting an actual strategy in place and a plan in place to actually go out and approach those clients. Because what you might suddenly find that where you've got a prospect to suspect relationship, if you can change that, all of a sudden you start to grow your business really, really quickly. But you might suddenly realize that your time is being wasted with some of the clients who see us as a suspect. We can get rid of those clients and start to replace them with more prospect to prospect relationships. And therefore our 2 out of 10 suddenly starts to go to 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. I've got certain clients at the moment who are filling 7 out of 10 requirements that they take on. And that is very liberating. And it's a very different organization when you walk in and you see people really engaged in their clients and loving working with their clients, because they're seeing that continual success. If you think from a recruiter's point of view, 80% of your time is being unsuccessful, how poor is that? So if we can slightly change that to 50%, 60%, 70%, then it changes the dynamics within the business. And what that does is what Helen says, it gives you that confidence. I think she said, yes, it's scary and I've turned work away. Yes, it is scary turning work away, but it's also very liberating, because I'm saying yes to clients that I know I've got a very high percentage chance of placing, and no to clients that I know I've got a very low chance of placing. But it's saying that professionally, and it's saying it properly to our clients to actually give them a very, very different view of ourselves, because clients think we are reliant on them when actually it is the other way around. And until we prove it's been the other way around, they will never see us as a prospect. So if it does go wrong and we get to that point where we are going to sack a client, let's talk about how we would go about sacking a client.
Ooh, scary stuff. I think with some honesty and authenticity, Howard, you know, we have to be confident and clear about what we do and the service we add and the way in which we work. And it's okay to say we want to work with you, but only if you want to work with us in this way. And I think it's okay to be authentic and true.
I know of agencies that just stop trading with them, just stop trading with their clients. They've made a decision. They've looked at their version of Geronimo the alpaca, and they've said, right, that's a Geronimo the alpaca.
Animal.
And we're going to go with the animal. Forgive me if that's a little bit insensitive, but we're going to look at our Geronimos, the alpaca with the bovine TV, whether he's got it or not, but we're going to put them down. And we're not going to spend a whole load of time telling them. We're just going to move on. Now, sometimes that can bite you, because you know, again, the client, the person you deal with moves on, and they remember how you treated them when they've gone on to another client. So you've always got to be respectful of that. Yeah. But I think if you have a short, intelligent conversation to say, look, this is my business. This is what we value in a relationship. This is what a partnership looks like to us. Unfortunately, you don't meet that criteria, because we are a blue chip recruitment company that provides talent. We know where it is. We know where to find it. We know how to place it. You're not respecting us for that. I'm afraid, unfortunately, right now, you're not an organisation we can work with. They may get uppity, they may not like it, but that's kind of it. That's the conversation. Sometimes if you do that in an educational way, to go to your last point, Howard, that's the opportunity where you may be able to turn it around. Often not. We'd like to think it is, but my experience is often it's not. And they just, the individual, the team that you're talking to, they either care enough to change or they don't.
So I think that's the key, isn't it? Is that you do it in such a way that you're leaving a door open that says, we'd love to carry on working with you, but only if we can make these changes. And you have to be willing to walk away, so you can be utterly respectful. in that conversation and leave doors open.
Yeah.
And I think it is about leaving the door open, but I think it is about highlighting to the client about how they've treated you. And I think certainly, as we look in this current modern climate, the mental health situation, the amount of pressure that clients put on recruitment agencies, and vice versa, the amount of pressure they put themselves under because they're not working in a true partnership relationship, a prospect to prospect relationship. I think once you start to highlight those things, then we can start to change how we are seen. And my view of recruitment is, in the years to come, if we start to change to be true talent acquisition and talent providers to clients, then could we change that from being a inverted commas free service that we have at the moment to more of a paid service? And all of a sudden, the biggest and most expensive tool that they buy every single year is their headcount, that they actually start to pay properly for that headcount, and therefore will get a better service and a better relationship with the agency. And I think some of the way that we work with the clients is because we have so often we'll do it for free. And, what's that comment? If it's free, then, is it really as good as it can be? Is it really the best that you can offer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I think clients have got to sort of see that there is a change coming. And to me, if we can start to create a positive change with our clients and start to demonstrate value, then to me, this is the catalyst that may start to get back into paid work for the services that we provide of talent acquisition, rather than just putting a bum on a seat for a client. So what you're talking about there is exit professionally, but exit them with enough question marks in their head about what you could be doing for them, should be doing for them, if they only allowed you. And if you start to read the other side of this, clients at the moment are asking for 4 major things. They want to reduce the overall cost of recruitment. That's not our fee, that's the overall cost of recruitment. They want to have a better candidate journey for candidate attraction. They want to be able to make a more informed decision when they're during the recruitment process, and they want to have more due diligence with regards to planning and preparation for their up and coming year, etc., etc. Recruitment agencies can provide all 4 of those things. We can reduce the overall cost of recruitment, etc., all the way down. And I think if clients start to understand that we are a partner and a value-added partner rather than a suspect, then we start to see a different thing. The flip side of this, though, is a different question. How do you convince the recruiter that their main client is a dog and needs putting down?
Or an alpaca.
Yeah, not an alpaca. Or a cat can help.
Yeah.
Howard, I think this is really interesting, because the reality is, especially from what you've just talked about with your conversations with clients recently, the data's there. And if you're going to talk to your recruiter about that, you need some data. And you've got the data in your business if you choose to look at it. And I think you need that to convince a recruiter that not working with you just need to be able to show them why they're effectively wasting time.
Yeah.
And how many more placements and how much more effective they could be without the time they're spending on that client. So I think you've got the data, analyze it, interrogate it, present it in a way that it makes sense, and back up what you're saying when you're having that conversation with your recruiter.
I think I've classed this to simply as it's convincing the inconvincibles of actually what's happening, because we spend all our time trying to convince the client when actually sometimes it's a consultant that needs convincing that things need to change, because it's always going to be the same, isn't it? Oh, they've just given me this job and it's a really great job, but last time you had to spend 20 CVs, you got no interviews, it took you etc., etc. Yeah, but they promised it's going to be different. Have they really promised it's going to be different? What have you got agreement on that? Why is it going to be different? And it's convincing the inconvincible, and the inconvincible is the person sat in your business, and potentially it could be you as the business owner. They're the greatest, biggest, bluest client that we've got in the area. We must service them. Well,
no, we
why?
Why? I think the other thing is, and we've got to remember this, as we struggle to find talent ourselves, many people who work for us are relatively new to our industry.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily know what good looks like. You know, those of us who've been in this industry for a long time, we've seen the ups and downs, we've had financial crashes, we've had all sorts of things, and we've navigated our way through it. We kind of know what good looks like and what bad looks like. We know how we feel about it. But a lot of the people that work for us don't. So I think, to Heather's point, you know, my mantra, let the data decide, you know, absolutely show them the data, but also show them what good looks like. To take 2 or 3 of your clients that are what you would say are good clients, they treat you with respect, they value what you do, and explain to the consultants at the desk, actually, this is what a good client is, this is what it is, this is what the relationship looks like, this is the sort of feedback I get. Our finance people are happy because this is when they pay. And if you educate your consultants that that's the type of thing they're going for, then over time, you know, that they will.
And maybe actually take it a step further and challenge your consultant and say, you can carry on dealing with this client if in the next 6 months you can get them to this point.
Yeah.
So work with them, work with your contacts in that client. And if we can shift this metric, and this metric over the next 6 months, fill your boots. You can carry on working with them and actually, you know, challenge them on that.
But I think that's a challenge that needs to go both ways. It needs to be a challenge to the client and a challenge to the consultant to do that. Because I do think it is very much that, you know, although I couldn't find a picture, this comment said it to me, summed it up. Buying credit is much like being drunk. The buzz happens immediately and gives you a lift. The hangover comes the day after. And that is exactly what we get in recruitment. We buy credit. We buy credit with our clients, don't we? We take jobs for free, and that's the credit. And then the hangover the day that comes afterwards when we can't actually fulfill it, and we're getting flack from the client rather than pushing back with the client and doing the right things with the client. So how often then should we be reviewing whether or not our clients are good or bad? Have we got a good pound coming into the business, or have we got a bad pound coming into the business?
Well, I think to Heather's point earlier, that the data will tell you that. If your DSO, for example, using that one metric, is 35 and goes down to 32, or is 27 and goes to 25, then you know that that particular metric is working well. So, and that could be a monthly, that could be in your monthly board pack or in your sales pack. It is a good discipline to get in your one-to-ones with your team leaders and your consultants, to get them to explain where they think they are, and to track that progress or perhaps lack of progress. Because then you're having an intelligent conversation about what they're saying and about what you can see. You know, you've sent 72 CVs and you've had very little response. Okay, yes, are they the right CVs? Are they sitting in a hole, a number? Are you dealing with an RPO that doesn't really understand? All sorts of things like that. But only by having the conversation can you begin to unearth whether or not the clients are good or bad. And I think that just becomes an ongoing thing, Howard. I don't think it's we'll do this every month, or we'll do this every 3 months, or we'll look at it at the end of the year. Because sometimes when you unearth a really good client that really is valuing you, what you want to do is put more effort into that client, into that person, into that relationship. So you may want more support, which means you've got to take it off somebody else that isn't behaving in the way you'd want them to behave.
I think if you accept that this is important, if you accept that it can make a huge difference to your organisation, it becomes part of the conversation. It becomes something you measure, and then there will be different measurement cycles for different elements of it. As you say, it's all about the data, and then it's all about the conversation about the data.
So if we start to think about that as a comment, what we start to think about is every client has that cycle, don't they, where it goes up and then it starts to come down again. Every client goes through that. It's when we start to see when it's 3/4 of the way up, can we then book the trend and put another service into the client and then keeps the trend going upwards? What's going on? What we're doing with that client? And it could be that the client goes up and then down is because our service becomes the norm and we don't add anything different, and therefore they get overtaken by a different supplier from there. So you're right, it does become that everyday review. But I think personally, when we start to look at our total client base, it is about looking at it on a regular basis, quarterly, monthly, whatever it be, to identify, is that a good client? Is that good client going bad? Is that a bad client? Is it going good? And actually doing the right things all the way through with those clients, because I think that's when you start to see a very different client base, and you start to see a very different ratio of placement jobs to placements, and we can start to book that 2 out of 10 trend, and therefore you've got a very, very different story to say to certain clients that aren't treating you in the respect that you duly deserve from there. So let's close it down for today. From there, it's been a very interesting view about the power balance. I love that comment about the power balance and about how we can turn the power back. Talking of power balance, next week is our first anniversary of Jump. I can't believe that it's been 12 months already, and we're already into our first anniversary. I've sent some emails out to various different people, so I'd love you to respond to those emails if you've not responded already. We've got quite a lot planned for next week. We're going to look at things such as what we think are our highlights over the last 12 months, what's the best advice that we've given, either on the webinars or to clients. We're going to look at things that have made a huge difference to us and to the marketplace. Obviously, we want to thank you guys as well. So you've already booked in because you've booked onto this webinar and you've appeared on this webinar, so you're already booked in for next week. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully we'll have videos out and all sorts of things that we're planning, depending on how creative we get. But thank you for today. It's been much appreciated. We look forward to seeing you next week. And if you've got any comments or any conversations you want to have, please give us a call. It'd be much appreciated. Look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Good week, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.